This episode is brought to you by The Build, a new podcast from the guys behind Sincera, Mike O'Sullivan and Ian Myers. They built their company by figuring out clever solutions to a few important ad tech problems in their industry. And that's exactly what this show is about. Mike and Ian interview some of the smartest tech minds in the biz to hear about how they identified opportunities, solved their hardest challenges, and grew their businesses in the process. Listen to The Build with Mike O'Sullivan wherever you get your podcasts.
I think we got ahead of ourselves on using AI to generate just insane amounts of code. We were pushing so fast. We unintentionally created some tech debt by just generating tens of thousands of lines of code all of the time. We ended up with this delta of generated code and then truly understanding what was in that code base. And so that required us to take a step back. What we did is we actually took about a 4-week period, migrated over the existing functionality, added new functionality on top, and we did that as a way to almost completely clean up our tech debt. My name is Tim Lidman, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Clyde AI.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries.
Spent 6 months moonlighting.
There's nothing on the back end.
Who share what it takes to change an industry.
I don't exactly know what to do
took
next.
many goes to get right.
Who built the teams that have their
Our
back.
company is its people.
The teams help each other achieve
Most
more.
proud of our team.
Keeping scalability top of mind.
All that infrastructure was a
Yes,
pain.
we've been fighting it as we grow.
Total waste of time. The stories you don't read in the headlines.
It's not an easy thing to achieve, mind
Took it
you.
off the shelf and dusted it off and tried it again.
To ride the ups and downs of the startup life.
You need to really want
It's
it.
not just about technology.
All this and more on Code Story.
I'm your host, Noah Labpart, and today how Tim Lidman is enabling you to collaborate with AI the same way you collaborate with real people. This episode is brought to you by The Build, a new podcast from the guys behind Sincera, Mike O'Sullivan and Ian Myers. They built their company by figuring out clever solutions to a few important ad tech problems in their industry. And that's exactly what this show is about. Mike and Ian interview some of the smartest tech minds in the biz to hear about how they identified opportunities, solved their hardest challenges, and grew their businesses in the process. Listen to The Build with Mike O'Sullivan wherever you get your podcasts. This episode is sponsored by Mesmo. If your team is collecting large volumes of logs, metrics, and traces, but still struggling to get timely answers, Mesmo can help. Mesmo is an active telemetry platform that processes and enriches observability data in real time before it's stored or analyzed. That means lower data volume, lower cost, and faster root cause analysis across your existing observability tools. To see how it works, get a demo at mesmo.com/codestory. That's MEZMO.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by BrainGrid. If you are building with AI coding tools, but your features keep breaking, you need to check out BrainGrid. It is the product management agent for AI builders. BrainGrid turns messy ideas into clear specs, tasks, and prompts that coding agents like Cursor and Clyde can actually build the right way. Ship real software, not fragile prototypes. Start free at braingrid.ai. Tim Lidman lives in Denver, Colorado. He has had an unconventional path to being a tech CEO. In fact, he moved from London to Sweden when he was 18 to try to be a heavy metal rock star. To earn extra income, he got into tech sales, which went really well. Eventually, he worked with WebEx around the time it got bought by Cisco, for SuccessFactors when they got bought by SAP, and then eventually doing his own startup, which eventually got bought by Accenture. Outside of his professional life, he's married with 2 girls. From his music years, he extracts skills that drove his success to date, which is the ability to break down product development and execution the same way you do music. In the days of his first startup, Tim's solution was used by consulting firms to power client engagement. Post-exit, while overseeing things at Accenture, he noticed that the whole industry was powered by Microsoft files, PowerPoint, Excel, Word, etc., i.e. driven manually. he started to wonder if he could codify the consulting process to remove the manual burden. This is the creation story of Clyde.
To help you understand what Clyde is, I'll probably start by explaining why we created it, which takes us back to the first startup that I ran. What Think Tank is it was a collaboration platform that primarily helped consulting firms drive client engagements and client workshops. So instead of showing up with a myriad of tools like PowerPoint, Excel, Miro, whiteboards, you would show up with Think Tank, which was a structured collaboration tool that really helped you guide a group of people from ideas to outcomes or challenges to outcomes. It was based on decades of research in behavioral science and how groups come together to align and make decisions. And then the product and the UX side kind of put on top of that research to then create this experience that, if you consider the collaboration industry and its progression, and that's an industry I grew up in, I noticed that there was this shift from just enabling people to connect remotely and to facilitate communication to being much more intentional about collaboration and the outcomes that are intended coming out from that collaboration. And so we ended up being used by the world's largest consulting firms and a host of boutique consulting firms. And they really used it to power all of their client engagement. And we became strategic to the point where we were embedded in billions of dollars of different bids as the main differentiator when they were going to market. And so then in 2021, Accenture bought us and took us off the market. All their competitors were using us. They were the second largest user. The first largest user was their main competitor. And then I operated at Accenture as a partner for about 4 years and oversaw and led the post-merger integration of Think Tank and so on. This is where, if we start talking about why Clyde was created, when I was at Accenture, I started to see the deep kind of underbelly and the nuts and bolts of how consulting was operating. And it surprised me to some extent that the whole industry was being powered by Excel, PowerPoint, and SharePoint. When Gen AI hit, I started thinking about some of the limitations that I had when I was running Think Tank. And one of the limitations I had running Think Tank was you still required a very human-heavy sort of manual effort to get through the consulting workflow. So you still had to design the client engagements, you had to facilitate them, synthesize all the information, often in real time. And then there's like a poor analyst that's up till 2-3 in the morning putting together the final client deliverable. And so I thought, with AI technology becoming more advanced, could I basically codify the workflow of consulting delivery into an AI and use an AI native sort of approach to develop a product that would take away extremely large amounts of that manual effort? Left Accenture to then set out to go do just that. So what we did is we then raised a very small amount of money and went and built an MVP. And what blew my mind, just talking about the AI native world we're in, to build the Think Tank version that got acquired cost us about $2 million in 18 months. We built an MVP for $250K in 3 months. And obviously we were leveraging the full sort of AI coding stack, which has become more and more advanced, but just the efficiencies we were able to drive by having our developers generate % of their code and started testing it out in the market. And what we found was that, of course, the consultants were very pleased to have someone build an AI tool for them. I had many senior consulting leaders that said, "Oh, we're so busy building agents for all of our clients that no one's building it for us." Luckily, they had already had about 2-3 years to try to build homegrown AI tools, which was mainly just slapping an AI assistant on top of their knowledge base. They realized that someone who deeply understands them as users and the UX that needs to enable them, that felt really good to be able to focus in on that expertise. The other kind of feedback that we were getting quite often was that the world of product and professional services are like oil and vinegar, right? Like product people don't really understand services and vice versa. Product people have to say, no, 999 times and yes once. Consultants have to say yes 999 times and no once. And so there's just this fundamental oil and vinegar thing going on. And so the fact that our team and our expertise was sitting in the Venn diagram between those two, I think kind of gives us an interesting kind of edge. But lastly, where we're at right now is we fully commercially launched the product in April of this year, so 2 months ago. What we've now seen is a really interesting unintended kind of outcome of launching this. We're seeing that in addition to consultants signing up, we have about 1,700 people that have signed up, where percentages of these users and use cases are outside of traditional consulting. It's people that have a problem and they need a workflow that they can collaboratively work with to get them to a very specific outcome. We've had healthcare professionals, we've had school teachers that are basically saying, I've never had access to a $500,000 McKinsey consultant. Now I can use this to drive me to a $500,000 quality outcome of how to improve my curriculum for my students. We're seeing, this unintended outcome of almost democratizing consulting, which I didn't think was going to happen for at least 2-3 years. I thought we were going to be focusing 100% on consulting firms, but turns out we've gone broader faster than I thought.
We're going to dive into all sort of areas of that overview that you touched on. Right now, I kind of want to stay on, what you would consider the MVP, that first version of Clyde that you built. How long did it take you to build, to bring it to life? And what sort of tools or methodologies were you using to bring it to inception?
The first, we ended up calling it the private MVP. That took us about three months to build that first version of the product that worked end to end and could achieve its use case. A few approaches that we took that made us operate or build that quickly is one, just from an architecture standpoint, we decided to build on a serverless architecture on Google Cloud, leveraging their backend using Cloud Functions, and then using React on the front end to just very quickly be able to iterate. The other thing that we very quickly did is we started using vibe coding very early on, before it became as mainstream as it is now. I think the most powerful way we used that was our CPO, my co-founder. She's also non-technical, a heavy expert in the use case and consulting. And we thought we were going to have to hire a head of UX, but she ended up becoming so good at vibe coding that she built all of our UX inside of Lovable. And then she built it in a way where she was using a combination of Lovable and Claude to prompt Lovable in a way that it didn't just develop prototype example mockups. It built the actual React components so that our developers could just lift and shift it from Lovable into our development environment. And that saved us incredible amounts of time. And what's wild to me is if I would have said that to you 6 months ago, that would have sounded really innovative. Whereas now I feel like it's table stakes and that everyone's just using vibe coding to build their UXs. It blows my mind how fast the industry progresses. And then once the MVP was out and we wanted to start iterating, that was right when the Ralph Wiggum loops was becoming really popular. And that's when we moved from pair programming with AI and having AI generate code to actually deploying ambient agents to actually go and automatically pull our tickets from Jira, go Ralph loop it as we call it overnight, and then devs come back and check and put up the PRs. And that's the process that we've now evolved to, where our devs are simply managing agents at this point.
This episode is brought to you by The Build, a new podcast from the guys behind Sincera, Mike O'Sullivan and Ian Myers. They built their company by figuring out clever solutions to a few important ad tech problems in the industry, and that's exactly what this show is about. Mike and Ian interview some of the smartest tech minds at Magnite, Chalice, DoubleClick, and LiveRamp to hear about how they identified opportunities, solved their hardest challenges, and grew their businesses in the process. This show is for you if you've had some of these breakthrough moments yourself, or if you're seeking inspiration for the next one. Listen to The Build with Mike O'Sullivan wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by .tech Domains. And this one hits close to home. Back in 2016, when I was building my own tech startup, I went on the hunt for that elusive .com. Looked high, looked low, and guess what I found? Nothing. What I did find cost me an arm and a leg. So I did what every founder does under pressure. Threw in extra letters, settled for the less than optimal name. And here's what I wish someone had said to me back then. Noah, you're building a tech startup. Just get a .tech domain. Techstartup.tech domain. It could not be more obvious. It tells investors, customers, and anyone who looks at your website, really, that tech is at the core of your build. And I've kicked myself plenty since, especially when I see the clean and sharp names tech companies have landed on .tech. Nothing.tech, 1x.tech, Aurora.tech, CES.tech, Ultra.tech, Alice.tech, Neon.tech, Blaze.tech, Pi.tech. You get the idea. So take it from someone who learned it the hard way. If you're building a tech startup, don't overthink it. Secure your .tech domain today from any registrar of your choice. Where I want to head next is how you progressed and matured it. And you kind of touched on that a little bit, but I want to take it even further into today, like how you've progressed and matured it since that MVP point. And then, to wrap it in a box a little bit, what I'm looking for is how do you go about building your roadmap? How do you decide that, okay, this is the next most important thing to build or to address with Clyde?
To get to the MVP, we used the fact that both myself and my co-founder have some pretty deep industry expertise and kind of used ourselves as the requirement for the customer. Once we launched, and as we're now maturing the product, we've switched to heavily relying on our users, really trying to replicate the successful kind of product-led growth successes that we've seen in the last couple of years out there. And so we've implemented some pretty heavy analytics on top of our databases, where we've actually put AI on top of it and plugged it in so that we can have conversations with our data and our users, just conversationally. Every week, I sit down and just start interrogating what our users are telling us, what they're using it for. I extrapolate the value that they're getting from it, where they're getting that value. And that's done a pretty good job of giving us a very clear roadmap of where we need to be prioritizing new features. We have a big release coming out in a few weeks where that's entirely driven by what our initial users had to say about the product and the release. So heavily user driven. Then on iterating our actual development workflow, the other thing we realized once we had launched is we were starting to get so many different variations of how Clyde was responding to different user prompts and this sort of adaptive dynamic nature product that in order to keep up with the quality at scale, we just finished implementing evals.
This episode is sponsored by BrainGrid. Building with AI coding tools is exciting until the moment things start breaking. You ask for a small change and suddenly 3 other features stop working. AI gets confused, misses edge cases, and loses track of your intent. The problem is not code generation. The problem is planning. That is why BrainGrid exists. BrainGrid acts as your product management agent. It writes clear specification, maps UX flows, asks the clarifying questions you forgot to ask, and breaks big ideas into engineering-grade tasks that AI coding tools can build reliably. It guides Cursor, Claude Code, Replit, Windsurf, and others so they deliver features that work and keep working. Founders use BrainGrid to build real AI-native SaaS products without a technical background. If you want reliable features instead of fragile prototypes, try BrainGrid for free at braingrid.ai. That's braingrid.ai.
That has further evolved our workflow to the point where we can now approach even the AI native parts of our product with a full test-driven development methodology. And so we're basically writing eval scripts, running them, and then gap analyzing, adjusting. And that's really helped us dramatically speed up the iterations that we can get there.
So I'm curious about team. How did you go about building that team? What do you look for in those people to indicate that they were the winning horses to join you?
We had a small little founding group of 3 people that we since doubled. The first 3, the founding 3, are people that I've known and worked with for 10 years. They're people I deeply trust and that I just have inherently built just so much trust with them over the years that I was deeply, intimately knowledgeable about how they could support and how they would win. The new team members that we've hired, I think we looked for a few things. So they've mainly been developers. So two developers and one marketing resource. I looked for people that first off were fundamentally AI native. People that have, since day one of Gen AI hitting the scene, been innovating, using it, applying it. And so in the interview process, we asked for concrete examples of where they've used AI successfully, where they see it going. So I think that was one big component. I think the second one is we're an AI native collaboration tool. So collaboration is at the heart of what we're about, and to the point where the philosophy is baked into our product. And so you kind of have to be inherently collaborative to be successful in our team. And so we looked for people that don't mind being in a highly unstructured collaborative environment. In fact, one of our developers, Justin, who we absolutely love, has almost become a forward deployed engineer because he understands the use case and can interact with users almost as if he was a pre-sales guy. So yeah, collaborative, very cross-functional, willing to go beyond specific kind of roles and definitions.
This episode is sponsored by Unblocked. Your coding agents have access to your code base. Maybe you even connected other tools via MCPs. But access doesn't mean context. Agents can't reason across MCPs. They don't know your architectural decisions, your team's patterns, or why the API was shaped the way it is. So agents look in the wrong place and deliver bad outputs. Then you spend time correcting. More loops, more tokens. Unblocked is the context layer your agents are missing. It synthesizes your PRs, docs, Slack, and tickets into organizational context that agents actually understand. So they make better plans, write higher quality code, use fewer tokens, and require fewer correction loops. If you're running Clyde Code, Cursor, or any agentic workflow, Unblocked is worth a look. Learn more at getunblocked.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by Mesmo. If you're responsible for reliability, performance, or platform architecture, you already know the problem. Telemetry volume is growing faster than teams can manage it. Mesmo addresses this by moving observability upstream. Instead of storing everything and asking questions later, Mesmo processes telemetry in motion, filtering, transforming, and enriching logs, metrics, and traces before they reach your observability backend. The result is cleaner data, reduced ingestion costs, and faster root cause analysis using the tools you already rely on. Mesmo integrates with platforms like Datadog, Dynatrace, and open source stacks, giving teams more control without adding operational overhead. This is especially useful for platform engineers and SREs supporting complex distributed systems where context and speed matter. To see how active telemetry works in practice, get a demo at mesmo.com/codestory. That's MEZMO.com/codestory. Let's switch into scalability, and this will be interesting given what you're building and the framework that's underneath it, the foundation that's underneath it. I'm curious how you've approached scale in the beginning, and if there's been interesting areas where you've had to fight it as you've grown. That could be overarching technology, it can also be business and people, all the things. I'm curious about any interesting stories around scale.
One is around this very topical topic of token scarcity. I'm not sure how much you've been reading about that, but the last week, 2 weeks, everyone's starting to talk about how the industry overall is moving from being heavily subsidized by the frontier models and all of the growth capital that's being pumped into there to now shifting to where tokens actually become a scarcity, and you start having to think about almost the business case of how you're going to use tokens. And we've actually deeply thought about that and surfaced it into our product. And so one thing that happens when you use Clyde is Clyde extracts the context from you in terms of what you're trying to do, the problem you're trying to solve, in this sort of very structured way. And then in the background, Clyde will identify what model should I be using here to solve for this problem. Do I need Opus 5.8 or Can I do this with Gemini Flash, Haiku? And our multi-LLM architecture that's kind of going on in the back end allows us to, on a weekly basis, optimize how we're doing our model selection and not put that onus on the user. Because one of the big challenges right now that I hear a lot of CIOs talking about is this fear of just unleashing all these really expensive reasoning models on users that don't really know how to optimize for it. And so the reason I think that's really relevant to scale is one of my nightmares when I started was, if at some point do all kind of AI native startups become financially unviable if the ground shifts under you with the frontier models. So model optimization is one big thing we're thinking about. The other one we're thinking about is open weight models. So we've started testing and experimenting with, if the time comes where we would have to rely on open weight models, what part of our use case could handle that? And then do we get to a point where we can use open weight models and fine tune on top of it and not have to rely on the frontier models for every last bit of our product?
Tim, as you step out on the balcony and you look across all that you've built thus far with Clyde, what are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of two things. One is market facing and one is an internal facing. On the internal facing one, I am exceptionally proud of our team and that we've been able to truly execute on this tiny team concept. So we decided pretty early on that we were going to keep this team as lean as humanly possible, right? There's 6 of us operating the company right now. And I think the fact that the team has been able to keep up with the levels of innovation going on, constantly adapting their workflows, and then learning to collaborate with non-technical founders and the technical, we've been able to operate as one team. And there's no silo at all between the technical and the non-technical side of the house, to the point where we don't even use those terms. I'm just really proud of the team internally. Externally, I think there's a zoomed out narrative right now where I'm sure you've heard the term that SaaS is dead, right? And the SaaS apocalypse and all these articles we've posted about that. One of the promises of the LLMs and the frontier models has been that you don't have to learn my paradigms in the way that you've had to learn SaaS paradigms to get benefit. You can just talk to me naturally and I'll be able to know what you're trying to achieve. And then it's on me as an LLM or frontier model to surface back the most elegant solution. I think that's problematic in one way because I don't think it's true. I think that we are having to adapt to the LLMs. We are having to learn about context engineering, right? Prompt engineering. And one thing I'm really proud of with Clyde is we've built it in a way where we're not putting the context on the user. We're building something that inherently extracts the content from the user, helps the user understand when they need to engage with human beings to solve their problem, which you can collaborate and do in our product, and when you need to use AI and what you need to use that AI for. So I'm really proud of actually enabling people and hopefully the world with tools that they truly natively can use in a natural sort of collaborative way as us humans do.
Let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
We made a couple of mistakes when we were building what we commercially launched. One mistake is I think we got ahead of ourselves, ahead of our skis maybe a little bit on using AI to generate just insane amounts of code, right? Like we were pushing so fast that we unintentionally created some tech debt by just generating tens of thousands of lines of code all of the time. And so we ended up with this delta of generated code and then truly understanding what was in that code base. And so that required us to take a step back. And after we launched, what we did is we actually took about a 4-week period as part of building the new release of Clyde that's coming out. We actually deployed an entirely new sort of mono repo and migrated over the existing functionality, added new functionality on top. And we did that as a way to almost completely clean up our tech debt. Getting ahead of that tech debt has just been really important. I think another area where we I don't know if failed is the right word, but certainly had some inefficiencies is before we implemented evals, we were doing a lot of, I'll just call it trial and error development, prompt tweaking, and trying to constantly refer back between the prompt, the graphs, the code. And that trial and error took us a long time sometimes to figure out root causes of issues. I think we could have done a lot faster.
Let's move forward then. This will be exciting. What does the future look like for Clyde, for the product, for your team, for the industry, where you think things are going, all those things really? What does the future look like?
Wow, I could talk about any level of extraction there. I think if I start looking at it big picture, I think I had mentioned this unintended consequence of democratizing consulting. I think people talk a lot about the death of consulting. There's a lot of articles out there that like to talk about how trillion-dollar service industries is about to collapse and so on. I look at it a little bit differently. In the same way that Lovable has democratized development, I feel like we're democratizing consulting in a way where the existing consulting industry, they're going to find ways to deeply specialize. They're going to find ways to innovate and continue to provide value to the largest companies in the world and so on. But I really like a world where that third grade school teacher has access to expertise and truly the strongest expertise in the world. And I think if you then think about what that means for society, imagine a world where everyone has access to the world's best advice, what that would do to just creating better people, better workflows, better outcomes. I think the other, if I think about more the economics of AI, I also think we're in for a really interesting ride for the next kind of 2 years. I don't necessarily believe in kind of the big horror stories around the AI bubble and it completely collapsing, but I do think there will be a correction if you think about just the natural innovation cycles. If you compare it to the .com boom, which is obviously 100 times faster if you think about AI, but ultimately, I think there's a cycle where it's overinvested in, there's a correction, and then at some point, the market finds a stabilizing point where the value and the investment harmonize together. So I think that's going to be a little rocky as we figure that out.
Tim, let's switch to you. Who influences the way that you work? Name a person or many persons or something you look up to and why.
I do have to give a shout out to Anton at Lovable. If you look at his story, he's really accomplished a product-led growth playbook in ways I don't think we've ever seen before. Today, I think it was today, they just hit $500 million in ARR. And I think it was something like 18 months ago, forget the exact date, they had 0. And so that growth curve and what they've been able to do to innovate is just really inspiring, both on the product side and the tech side, but also on the go-to-market side. They've found ways to innovate on their pricing, their growth loops, their retention loops in ways that I would love to replicate. And I do kind of shamelessly steal quite a bit from their playbook as we look to optimize our own go-to-market.
Tim, last question. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world and can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person, having gone down this road a bit, several times?
Don't ride the roller coaster would probably be the biggest one. Going from 0 to 1, creating something from nothing is, I think, one of the hardest things you can do in business. And it's going to come with incredible ups and downs. And if you strap in and ride those ups and downs, you're going to burn out. Like, you're just not going to be able to emotionally handle the journey. But instead, if you just observe the roller coaster, see it going up and down, but maybe don't ride every single up and down, I think it'll create the resilience required for anyone that's trying to do anything that we builders are trying to accomplish. So yeah, that'd probably be the biggest one.
Oh, that's incredible advice. Well, Tim, thank you for being on the show today, and thank you for telling the creation story of Clyde.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story.
Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
Capital One's tech team isn't just talking about multi-agentic AI. They already deployed one. It's called Chat Concierge, and it's simplifying car shopping. Using self-reflection and layered reasoning with live API checks, it doesn't just help buyers find a car they love. It helps schedule a test drive, get pre-approved for financing, and estimate trade-in value. Advanced, intuitive, and deployed. That's how they stack. That's technology at Capital One.